Hi, my name is Alice from Infona. Welcome to NileWell, the first online platform that connects environment researchers and journalists.
My name is Gerald Tenua. I'm a senior multimedia journalist working with a New Vision newspaper, and I've been working there reporting on the environment for the past 20 years.
My name is Mary Akurut. I have a doctorate in engineering science, focusing on water resources and climate change. My research interests are in water quality, climate change around Lake Victoria, and I'm currently working with the Grand Electricity Generation Company as the manager dam safety and water resources.
The scientists believe that their role is to work in the lab, do their research somewhere in the research office, and they have no business with the media. And yet, the media can add value to their work by reporting it and making sure that it reaches so many people. And this has been quite a challenge. The NileWell is bringing these two parties together to be able to interact, to be able to chase the mistrust that has been existing between the two parties.
NileWell is a unique platform. It helps to interlink the journalists, the scientists, students and other researchers. It gives you a platform to also link to your own work, and also it gives you updates on the current and existing information that you have on the Nile Basin.
You see, in many cases, the journalists, the first time, they may not get it right. But through continuous interaction with the scientists, they'll be able to learn a lot more, and they'll be able to learn correctly. I'm a living example of that. The way I was reporting 20 years ago is not the way I was reporting 10 years ago, and it is different from the way I was reporting 5 years ago.
It's important that we join this NileWell platform because it helps us to link between scientists and journalists and provides information to the public in a way that is really understood and information that is scientifically proven. So this is a good link that you need to join. So go NileWell.
So what are you waiting for? Create an account today by logging on to www.nilewell.org.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Just a minute, please. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome once again to our Science Wednesday. Just a minute, can you hear me well? Is there an echo on your end?
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, great. Welcome once again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you all here for the 8th edition of the NileWell Science Wednesday. This is the last episode of Science Wednesday. Yes, sorry about that. Okay. I hope you can hear me well without any echo. Yeah, this is the last Science Wednesday and definitely the 8th since we last began. In case you're joining us for the first time, my name is Deli Sive, Infonail's Communications Officer. Infonail is a journalism group that covers critical stories on water and the environment in the Nile Basin. We use data and science-based multimedia storytelling. So the objective of this Nile Well Science Wednesdays is to facilitate learning and networking for both scientists and journalists based on the different science communication topics that we share. So I hope you learned something out of this, the topic we're going to share today, and then you can be able to develop story ideas out of this. Once again, before we start, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. Write in your name, your country, your organization, your media house, or your research institution, your profession, and the hashtags you can use for today in case you'd like to tweet or post on social media. Use hashtag Science Wednesdays and tag us at InfoNile. I'm going to post the hashtag on social media. Feel free to use it. As we have always done, I encourage us to make this session as interactive as possible with minimal to unnecessary interruption. To achieve this, kindly mute your microphone unless you're contributing. You can type your questions or concerns in the chat box. You can also use the raise hand emoji in case you have to interrupt midway. And just to dive into the topic today, we are going to launch one of our investigative stories on the GERD. We did this story for about 2 years, and this story was done by both Bastien, Massa, and Larie. The story's title is Between the Dam and the Sea. In this session, we're going to understand the impact of the GERD in Sudan and the science of the dam's impact. But before we delve into this, I would wish to introduce our co-founder, Annika McGuinness, to give a few remarks about the project. Good morning, Annika. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine. How is Maryland, USA?
It's cold, but it's all good.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you so much for finding time to join us. Feel free to take the stage.
Okay, thank you, Delicate. My name is Annika McGuinness, and I'm the co-founder of InfoNile along with Frederick Mujira. InfoNile is a geojournalism platform and media development organization in the Nile Basin, and it's part of Water Journalists Africa that unites water journalists across the African continent. So at InfoNile, we bring together scientists and journalists to improve reporting that is based on scientific facts and to help people make informed decisions based on science. Through this, we provide story grants, we train journalists and scientists, and we run the Nile Well platform, which Delicate has already introduced. When it comes to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, many perspectives have been shared that have various consequences, especially between the countries of Egypt and Ethiopia. However, our starting point for this particular investigation was, for us, the absence of clear information on what would be the impact of the GERD on Sudan, the country located in between Ethiopia and Egypt. Our intent was to support Arthur and Bastien, two journalists who have expertise in reporting Nile issues, to report information that bring out scientific perspectives on how this dam is expected to affect Sudan. This project was part of our story grant cycle titled The Benefits and Pitfalls of Generating Power from Waterways in the Nile Basin, which started in 2021 and supported a series of stories on the complex impacts, both positive and negative, of dams in the Nile Basin. According to the Nile Basin Initiative, as populations are growing, projections of power demand for 2035 in the Nile Basin countries indicate an increase of 300% and higher than present demand. Whereas dams promise an increase in energy supply, economic development, employment, flood control, and irrigation, they can also pose threats to fragile ecosystems, displace people, increase floods, contribute to climate change, and can also lead to a loss of employment. We hope you enjoy reading Between the Dam and the Sea, and we're looking forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annika. In the interest of time, I'd like us to start our topic almost immediately. But before that, I'd like to introduce our speakers of the day. We have one of the journalists present, Bastien Massa. We have Dr. Salman, and then we have William Davison. So before we start, allow me to introduce each one of them. I will briefly read their bio, and then I would ask them to kindly say hi so as to also test your microphones. And then we shall start with Bastien, who will also represent his colleague on covering the story. So I'll start with Bastien, who is with us on the call. Bastien Massa is a journalist with a focus on East Africa. After studying political science, he went to the source of the Blue Nile and obtained a diploma in water governance and hydro diplomacy. In 2020, in light of the rising tensions around the GERD, he spent 8 months working on the Voices of the Nile, a multimedia project along the Nile from Lake Tana in Ethiopia to the Egyptian Delta to document the relationship of communities using the Nile River. Always with one foot in Sudan, Bastien has covered a couple of stories, including identity struggles in the Nuba Mountains, to conflicts in Darfur and political demonstrations in the capital. He attempts to paint a portrait of Sudan and Sudanese people in a post-revolutionary context. He is currently based in Goma in eastern DRC. Bastien is here with us today. Hi, Bastien, how are you?
Hi, Delika. Thanks for welcoming me today.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for joining us. How is DRC?
I hope the internet connection will be good enough for me to do my presentation, but it's quite okay. It's a little bit a mess with the election and security issue around Goma, but so far we hope the situation will remain like this.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to Dr. Salman. Dr. Salman A. Salman is the chairman, University of Khartoum Council of Sudan. He's a distinguished honorary member and fellow with the International Water Resources Association and an editor of Brill Research Perspectives in International Water Law. He served as the World Bank Water Law Advisor from 1994 to 2009 and was the co-director of the Hague Academy of International Law session on water resources and international law in 2001. Before joining the World Bank, Dr. Salman worked as a legal officer with the United Nations International Fund for Agricultural Development in Rome. He has taught law at the Faculty of Law in the University of Khartoum in Sudan. He's also a co-recipient of both the International Water Resources Association Crystal Drop Award in 2017 and the World Bank Alumni Award of 2023. Dr. Salman earned his Bachelor's of Law degrees from the University of Khartoum in Sudan and holds a master's degree and a doctorate degree in law from Yale Law School. He has published widely in the field of water law and policy. Hello, Dr. Salman, how are you? Good morning.
Hello,
from
Delegate.
DC, Washington.
Hello, Delegate. Yeah,
How
thank
are
you very
you?
much for the introduction. I'm from Washington. It is 8:15 in the morning, but that's okay because I'm a morning person.
Okay, thank you so much for spending time to join us at this time of the day. Next, we're going to have William Davison. Thank you so much, William, for joining us. William currently serves as International Crisis Group Senior Analyst for Ethiopia. He was previously Bloomberg's Ethiopia correspondent from 2020 until 2017. He has also published with The Guardian, Foreign Policy, Al Jazeera, Christian Science Monitor, and other international media. In 2018, he founded Ethiopian Insight, from which he is editorially detached. So he currently works at International Crisis Group, as I've already mentioned, and this position he has been working here since 2019 as the senior analyst for Ethiopia. Good morning, Davison. How are you?
Good morning, Delicate. I'm doing very well, thank you, and looking forward to today's discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. Are you joining us from Ethiopia or you're out?
No, I'm joining you from the UK.
From the UK, okay. You're only 2 hours away from us, but still, thank you so much for joining us. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to start today's session with insights maybe from Dr. Salman. Dr. Salman, are you able to maybe give us a background of the dam, just a slight background of the dam before we go into your presentation and how far the now? Just a slight background on the GERD. Hello?
You're on mute, I think.
Sorry. Okay, on Infonile I'm on mute, but I'm joining using Delicate. Can you hear me on my other phone, on my phone, sorry?
No, I can hear you. Can't hear Dr. Salman.
Oh, sorry. Hello, Dr. Salman, can you hear me? Okay. I think Dr. Salman is experiencing a technical hitch on his end. So allow me to start with Bastien. Bastien, are you able to share your presentation?
I can just give a tiny bit of background on the project if you'd like.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is an ongoing project, which is a very large hydroelectric dam based in Ethiopia, but near to Sudan on the main tributary of the Nile, the Blue Nile River. It was begun in 2011, so it's been a very long construction process, and there's been a series of negotiations between Egypt and Ethiopia and Sudan during that period. Ethiopia has now done most of the filling and construction of the dam, but it is not yet finished. It is producing some power. So although it's a very long way down the road, we don't really know what its full effect will be in terms of its economic impact, as well as its sort of socio-economic and hydrological impact. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, William. You have saved the day. So I'll move to Bastien. Bastien, are you able to share your screen kindly?
Yeah, maybe before showing like the findings of this investigation, I wanted to come back on why we decided with my colleague to focus on this subject. So we started back in 2020, 2021, and at this time the narratives around the GERD were really like heated especially between Egypt and Ethiopia. And some people were already talking about like water war, and we could understand why having this GERD, the dam, was important for Ethiopia, and why Egypt was opposing the dam. But we had like difficulties to understand the position of on Sudan, and sometimes they were politically agreeing with Ethiopia, and sometimes they were siding with Egypt. So we decided to go to Sudan and to meet, so during multiple trips, following the different feelings of the GERD, and to meet with politicians, economists, environmentalists, and also to go on the ground, like to meet population who will be affected by the dam. And so today, this investigation, I think, will help everybody to understand a little bit better what can be the consequences for Sudan. And just my second point will be like this investigation has been made before the start of the conflict in Sudan. So today, like the Sudanese state is not like working properly, and of course, the war will affect the way Sudan negotiate, operate, develop, and even benefit from the dam, or not benefit from the dam. So some figures might be not working now, but the consequences and what kind of consequences it can have are still good today. So that's what just my introduction. And now I will try to share my screen. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah, we can see it. Maybe you can just put it on full screen.
Yes. Okay. Do you see it properly? Is it fine?
It's not yet on full screen. We can see, but it's not on full screen. Okay. Or maybe you can just proceed.
Okay, I will.
It looks good to me.
Yeah.
Okay. I will come back to this. Maybe it will be enough. So yes, to start with the findings, I will start with what can be the positive consequences and how Sudan can benefit from the GERD. And the first topic will be on electricity production and dam operation. So we all know that the GERD will increase the electricity production in Ethiopia, but also it will have probably an impact on electricity production in Sudan for one main reason. It will generate a steady flow of water for the Blue Nile all year long. So now in Sudan, you have a dry season, which is about 9 months, and a rainy season, which is about the 3 other months. And so the level of the water from the Nile is changing a lot with the GERD. And if Ethiopia is releasing water quite continuously to produce electricity, it will stabilize the level of the water in the river. And 2 days of electricity production in Sudan was mostly during the rainy season, and with this GERD and with this stabilization, they will be able to produce more all over the year. Another point also is Sudanese dam have a lot of problem of siltation. I will shift. Sorry, to the second slide, if it's working. So yes, so you can see the map of the different Sudanese dam. You have 5 main Sudanese dam, and now with this steady flow of water, they will produce electricity all year long. I just want to say that hydropower is, of course, the main source of electricity in Sudan, and according to the estimation, the electricity production could rise by up to 25% of the current production. If you go, I don't know if everybody has been or not to Sudan, but if you go to Sudan, you can see a lot of electricity cut all day long, and it's quite a mess. So it can be a real opportunity for Sudan and Sudanese to have access and to solve this issue of electricity cut and power cut. And also, Sudanese dam will have more storage because now they are affected by the siltation issue. So at almost 2/3 of the storage of some dams are occupied by this a kind of mud and silt that is coming from Ethiopia, from the islands. And with the GERD, it will block this siltation. It will block about 86% of all the silts coming from Ethiopia, and it will allow Sudanese dam to operate in a better way and to store more water for irrigation purpose also, that I will see after. But the most important point, and I will come back to this point a lot during this short presentation, is the issue of cooperation, because this can only work if Ethiopia and Sudan are cooperating regarding the quantity of water that is released, the timing of the water that is released. During the first filling in 2020, Ethiopia started the filling without notifying Sudan. And it had a consequence that for 3 or 5 days in Khartoum, people had no access to water resources because they didn't anticipate the filling, so which means cutting the flow of the water coming from Ethiopia. So if after talking a lot with Sudanese politicians or technical experts, they are all saying, we are supporting the GERD. It can have a lot of benefits for Sudan, but we need a proper cooperation. And I think both of the other speaker will come back on this point, but this is a key point for Sudan. And so we talk about the electricity, but also the other point is agricultural opportunities. So by providing more water on a steady flow all year long, it will allow Sudan to increase irrigation water that can be used for irrigation. And it is planned for Sudan that they will be able to create 9 new irrigation schemes in the Gezira. So it's the part between Khartoum, it's the part between Khartoum, between the border with Ethiopia and Khartoum. It's a huge irrigation scheme that employs 120,000 workers. And so now with the steady flow of water, we can expect 9 new schemes, which means more job opportunity, but also more capacity of exportation, economic development, and industrial development for Sudan. I think I will show shortly a map of the different schemes. So you have in red the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, and at the confluence of the 2 rivers you have Khartoum, so it's in between. Also, one point, I don't know if, but when you are around along the Nile in Sudan, you see that the soil erosion, and each year the water is, the heavy water of the rainy seasons is destroying a bit more some agricultural lands on the side. So with a steady flow, it will reduce this erosion. And also the economic benefit for Sudan. So it was figures, as I told, that where it was forecast before the war, but the expectation regarding the economic benefits could be between $47 and $83 billion during 40 years. And the main beneficiary of this dam will be the industrial sector that will be able to use the water, the electricity, and also to transform the agricultural production. And also Sudan will be able to save money on the dam maintenance. As I said, you have a big sedimentation issue in Sudan, and it costs a lot of money to dredge the reservoir and to clean this. So with this GERD, they will save money on this. And the last and maybe really important also issue is flood mitigation. So in 2020, in September, you had a huge flood in Sudan, the biggest in 100 years, that affected more than 800,000 people and killed around 100 Sudanese. And so what Ethiopian and Sudanese officials say about the GERD is that it will block this, it will prevent the floods in Sudan. So this assertion is partially true. It will reduce the high flow of the water of the Blue Nile, but we have to also keep in mind that most of the people that are affected by the floods in Sudan are not living directly near the river, and they are also affected by rain floods, which we call flash floods. So it will solve a bit, reduce the damage, but it will not totally save Sudan from floods. And also one of the Sudanese researchers interesting point. It was it will reduce the hazard, which means it will reduce the quantity of floods that you can have on a time of 10 years, for example, but it will increase, or it might increase, the vulnerability of Sudanese, because if you are less subject to floods, and so you start building encroachment on the river, and you forget that it can be an issue. So at a time where there are a lot of water in Ethiopia and they have to release some water, the consequences can be even more damaging. And now I will come to the other point, is that not everybody will benefit from the dam in Sudan. So at the state level, you can see that how macroeconomically it can benefit to Sudan. But if you look at some farmers that we met on the ground during this investigation, is that if you block silts in the GERD, it will mean that the soil will be less fertile, and farmers will have to compensate with fertilizers, which means environmental damage, but also like more cost. It will be more costly. And second point is that if we have these irrigation schemes that can be created for some small farmers who are cultivating along the Nile, what we call the recession agriculture, which means during the dry season they cultivate on the land that the water left, and on this land, which is really fertile because it has all the sediments. If you have a steady flow of water all year long, all these farms will be lost, or most of them. In this investigation, it was expected to be more than 50% of those lands. And another point is the impact on the brick production. So all along the Nile and also in other parts of Sudan, you can see a lot of artisanal or man-made brick, what we call kiln, small brick production. And all the buildings in Khartoum are built with bricks. It's really something really important. But they need, so how they do is that they dig holes on the land next to the Nile, and they take this muddy and full of silt, full of really rich soil, and they cook it and they dry it, and with the steady flow of water and the lack of sediment and silt, we can expect that it will affect harshly the brick production. And it's not like huge industries, it's more like people, most of the time poor people coming from rural areas to Khartoum and doing this kind of jobs. And it can be up to 20,000 people. And for the farmers or for the brick makers, at the time of the last meetings for the GERD negotiations, or even within Sudan before the war, just the beginning of the war, no compensation has been discussed or agreed upon. And my last point will be the lack of impact studies on the environment and potential risk for biodiversity. There was a big, I think at the beginning when the GERD was started to be built, like discussion, a kind of assessment or beginning of assessment about environmental risk, but it was stopped quickly. And now in Sudan, nobody knows how it will affect, for example, the fish quantity in the river, and how it can affect the plant species, the quality of water. And what we know is that when you have a huge project like this, which is less than 100 kilometers away from the border with Sudan, and just after the border, you have the Roseres Reservoir, which is one of the main dams in Sudan. And a lot of communities are living there. There are fishermen. They have already been displaced because of the construction of the Roseres Dam in the past. And now they don't know what will happen for them. So, but what we know is that it will change the oxygenation of the water. It will change maybe the salinity of the water and the temperature of the water. And we don't know how it can affect, to what extent it can affect fish species there. But also we know that in the past, a lot of fish were going upstream to breed in Ethiopia. So it will change the biodiversity. And what Sudanese are complaining about is the lack of assessment made by Ethiopia. And so I just want to conclude my short presentation on this point, is that all the benefits that Sudan can expect from the GERD can be turned into negative impact if there is no cooperation and sharing information between Sudan and Ethiopia. And second point is that something that can be good for part of the economy, for example, the fact that the GERD will stop the silt in Ethiopia, it will be good for the dam operation and water storage in Sudan. But at the same time, it will affect brick makers and farmers. So we have, at least for these individuals that will be affected, we have to find compensation for them. And the last point is that the conflict is still ongoing, and so we still don't know what will be the situation once the war will be over. And I hope Sudan will find a way to start again the economy, and for the people to find another way after the war. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bastien, for that. I hope we have captured something out of what Bastien has said. We have also shared the link to the investigative story. Annika has just shared right now. You can check it on your chat box, the link to the multimedia story that we've published on our end. And so we can move to the next person on the program, that is Dr. Salman, who is going to give us the science and the legal aspects pertaining to Sudan's perspective on the GERD. Dr. Salman, welcome once again.
Yeah, thank you. Just let me share my presentation. Do you have the screen?
You can share the screen. Yeah, we can see it now. Are you able to put it on full screen?
I'm trying. Yes. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Bastien has really gone on in a very detailed way about the benefits of the GERD to Sudan, as well as the risks. And I don't intend to repeat what he said, but so I will go into some basic issues on international water law, the Nile River, and the GERD, and then supplement some of the points that Bastien raised, just complement them a little bit. Let me make two comments before I start. First, I'm doing this presentation on my own capacity. I don't represent the government of Sudan or any institution. I'm just an academic researcher working on a number of issues on water, particularly the Nile. The second thing, I also thank Bastien for mentioning the war, and I hope you will keep Sudan in your thoughts and prayers, and do what you can, whatever you can, through pressing governments or NGOs or international organizations to put some pressure on the parties to keep this devastation. It's a very devastating war, and it's a very concerning situation. One last point before I move, and this is addressed to Bastien. I saw the first map that you show on the Nile, and shows Sudan's border with Egypt. In the northeastern corner, there is an area called Halaib, which is disputed between Sudan and Ethiopia and Egypt, and the issue went to the Security Council. So there is a disputed area. I hope you will mark that in your map, the disputed area of Halaib between in Sudan, rather than have this straight line. Sorry, Bastien? I think you are muted.
No, we'll see. It's a map with InfoNile, but we'll check it later.
Yes, please, because there is a disputed area called Halaib in the northeastern part. So I will quickly go through international water law, the Nile Basin, and the GERD. And I'll give a short, the structure of the presentation is as follows. I'll give a short history of the international water law, which basically the UN Water Courses Convention and the UNEC Convention. And then I'll go through the Nile agreements, the 1929, the 1902, 1929, 1959 agreement, and then the cooperative framework agreement that was agreed upon in 2009, and then the agreements on the GERD, the effects of those agreements, as well as the agreements, specific agreements on the GERD, and then we just have some concluding remarks. International water law. Let me emphasize what the point that Bastien raised about cooperation. International water law is really known as international is the law of cooperation. Without cooperation, the law won't work. It is based on cooperation. If you don't have cooperation, if you have wars and disputes and tribunals, then you are not going to reach the point where you can use international water law effectively for cooperation. So the international water law evolved through a very lengthy process. There are two institutions called the International Institute of International Law and the International Law Association, worked for years and years. And I don't want to go into details of their work, but I would just want to, I'm sure some of you know the Helsinki rules, which were issued by the International Law Association in 1966. There are a number of regional bilateral treaties. Most important of them are the Rhine, the Danube in Europe, the Senegal and Niger, and the Southern African Community, the Mekong. And then all those treaties and all those, the contribution of those two institutions and the treaties helped with the work of the UN Water Courses Convention. This is a convention that was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1997. And it took some time for it to enter into force. That happened in 2014. So we have a treaty called the UN Water Courses Convention. It's a long name, but I'm just going to use the UN Water Courses Convention, which is a global treaty and which has entered into force. And basically, it's a codification of basic principles of international water law. And then we have another treaty, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. They started a convention. It's a long name. It's called Water Convention. And it started as a regional treaty for the Economic Commission for Europe, for the countries of the ECE. But then they decided to open it for other countries to join. They amended the treaty and the amendment into force. And then some countries have joined the treaty. So we have strange situation, unprecedented and unusual, of having two treaties on international water courses in force. This is very unusual. If you look at any other thing, the law of the sea, whatever, there is only one treaty that's in force. Here we have two treaties, and it's very unusual. But the two treaties have been read as complementing each other. The Nile Basin position of the UN Water Courses Convention varied very much. In 1997, when the General Assembly voted, Kenya and Sudan voted for the convention. And then 4 countries abstained: Egypt, Ethiopia, Uganda, Egypt, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Tanzania. Those 4 countries abstained. 4 major countries of the basin abstained. Burundi voted against the convention. And then Congo, Eritrea, and Uganda did not participate. So we have a very wide variation from for the convention, against the convention, abstaining and not participating. And the point I want to reach from here is that currently there are about 37 parties to the UN Water Courses Convention. None of the Nile countries is a party to the convention, not even Kenya and Sudan, which voted for the convention, which is again a very unusual circumstances. I don't want to go quickly. I don't want to go on the Nile, on the major feature of the Nile, but let me mention 2 or 3 points. Where's the longest river? 6,650 kilometers. It's second largest lake, Lake Victoria. The largest swamps, the Sud, oldest and largest dam, starting with the Swan Dam and going through a series of dams and ending with the GERD now. Oldest and most controversial treaties, and this is where we're stopping. Oldest and most controversial treaties is the cradle of civilization. It's shared by 11 countries. Well, we all know that. And it's region of extremes: poverty, 9 of 15 countries, the poorest in the world; high variability and climate change; conflict, 10 of the 11 countries had some sort of conflict since 1994. But then the most extreme example or characteristic is unilateral development plans. We don't have a project that's planned and executed and benefiting two countries jointly. I mean, there are benefits to Sudan from the GERD, but Sudan is not participating in the GERD in execution, management, or funding. So the unilateral development plans is really the one basic feature. It's a small flow of the system-wide. The agreements talk about 84 billion. Some recent agreements, some recent studies shows the Nile has 109 billion cubic meters. But whichever we take, it is a very small flow compared to the fact that this is the longest river in the world, and this is the river that has the largest use and disputes. It's 2% of the Amazon. So you need 50 Niles to make one Amazon, 6% of the Congo, and 17% of the Nile, of the Niger, 12% of the Yangtze, and even Zambezi River, which we thought of as a small river. The Nile is 1/4 of the Zambezi River. Very limited infrastructure, 10% of hydroelectric power developed, 15% of the population with electricity, mostly in Egypt, Sudan, about 30% in Sudan and 20% in Ethiopia, but the total is about 15 population. Then we have high rain variability, which is really the issue that brings benefits to the Sudan, which will come on later. The Nile River consists of a number of tributaries. The most important is the Blue Nile, where the GERD is being built, and which provides 59% of the waters of the River Nile, followed by the White Nile, about 14%, and then the Sobat, which joins the White Nile later on, and then Adbara. What we could note here is that the Ethiopian plateau provides about 86% of the water flow of the Nile, whereas the equatorial lakes, Lake Victoria, and provide 14%. So it's another wide variation. The riparian stakes, interests, and positions differ, just as we saw how they reacted to the UN Convention. The Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan, and South Sudan, they have very high stakes, and this is clear from the GERD. Uganda have just high stakes, and then Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania, the stakes are classified as medium, and then DRC and Eritrea, they have a low stake in the Nile, in the river. The treaties of the Nile that we mentioned at the beginning, there is a 1902 Nile Treaty between Britain and Ethiopia, which Britain signed on behalf of Ethiopia, and then Egypt later on claimed that they have succeeded to the treaty. This is a very controversial treaty. Ethiopia said that it has major problems. They said it has not been ratified, and they said by any organization, so it's not binding. So this treaty, Egypt is sticking to it, but Ethiopia is saying, no, it's not binding on me. Similarly, the 1929 treaty, this is between Britain representing the East African colonies, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and Sudan, and Egypt, and those countries upon independence declared that they are bound by this treaty for 1 year, and if a new treaty is renegotiated, then fine. If not, then after 1 year, they are no longer bound by it, and that's again leaves the treaty in limbo. So both treaties are really, as I said, in limbo. Then the 1959 treaty. This is a bilateral treaty between Egypt and Sudan, and its title is for full control of the Nile, and it divides the entire Nile flow between Egypt and Sudan, 80% to Egypt, 20% to Sudan, and other Nile states' water rights are decided by Egypt and Sudan, and whatever use is granted to a country is under supervision of Egypt and Sudan. So basically, it's a bilateral treaty, and it allocates the 100% of the waters to Sudan and Egypt. It's a very unfortunate treaty because it just ignores totally the other riparians, and it's not consistent with international law, which basic principles is equitable and reasonable utilization. There are attempts for cooperation in the Nile, despite all the treaty problems and all the past. It started with 1960, a hydromet project that looked at the Lake Victoria and the rising level, followed by the Undugu meetings, which tried to bring the riparians together so to talk about the possible cooperation. This was followed by Teco Nile in 1980s, and then the 2000 Nile meetings. And then 1999, this is the most significant development, is the birth of the Nile Basin Initiative, NBI. This is started in 1999. And then its purpose is a transitional arrangement until a full-fledged arrangement is put in place. And for that purpose, negotiations went on for 10 years on the Nile Basic Cooperative Framework Agreement. And this is a treaty inclusive of all the idea was actually to be inclusive of all the riparians for sharing the river, protecting it, managing it. And unfortunately, after 10 years of negotiation, there wasn't an agreement. Sudan and Egypt claimed wanted certain provisions included regarding their water rights and the existing water uses, and the other refused, saying that this will annul the equitable and reasonable utilization principle. And so it was opened for signing. It was signed by 6 countries. Sudan and Egypt opposed it and refused to deal with it in any way. It needs 6 countries to enter into force, and so far 4 countries have ratified it. So we still need 2 more countries for the cooperative framework agreement, which is called the CFA, to enter into force. This is an arrangement that was put by the Nile Basin Initiative. You have a Nile Council of Ministers, you have the Nile Technical Advisory Committee, and then you have MBI Secretariat in Entebbe. In Ethiopia, we have the ENTRO, Eastern Nile Organization, Addis Ababa, and then and then we have the in Kigali, the Southern Nile Organization. So this is the basic structure that was put under the MBI. It is working to some extent, but at least keeping the parties in place together. But unfortunately, the cooperative framework agreement is not being agreed upon, and even if it enters into force without Egypt and Sudan, that will raise lots of questions about whether it will be effective at all. There are a number of areas for possible cooperation between the riparian countries in Nile, a large number. Ethiopia has vast hydropower. It's estimated at 40,000 megawatts, about 30,000 from the Nile alone. And those are 1960 estimates. So with the technological development, many engineers tell us that it will be far more than 30,000. And then the Sudan large irrigable lands, about 45 million feddans, and that's very limited. Very part of it is irrigated now. Then there is the wealth of the fish in Lake Victoria, which can be developed cooperatively. And then there is Egypt's relative agro-industrial capabilities. And then there is South Sudan huge livestock wealth and irrigable lands, which the livestock wealth can be commercialized, and the irrigable lands could be used. Yet the unilateral development plans approach is the norm, and those large areas of cooperation, large areas for cooperation have not really been utilized approach yet. The framework agreement, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned about that, still not in force. So this is the signing ceremony, which, as you could see, that Egypt and Sudan are not there. I'll come now to the GERD, and this GERD is not the first project in Ethiopia on the Nile. There have been other projects: the Finsha, Tana, Belize, Tekezi. Those are the 3 major dams that Ethiopia built before the GERD. However, the GERD had this attention because it's larger than any of those. It started in April 11. Completion expected in 2023, depending on the filling. It lies 20 kilometers from Sudanese borders, and this is raising an issue of safety. And I would like Bastien to add it to the concerns of the Sudan. This is an issue of safety. You have 74 billion cubic meters of water 20 kilometers away from the border of Sudan. And so there are major concerns about the safety and whether enough is being done. The huge benefits to Sudan, Bastien mentioned most of them: electricity. The main thing that the benefits are based on is regulation of the river. And Bastien mentioned that the Nile, the Blue Nile, flows in 3 months. 75% to 80% of the water flows in 3 months, from mid-June to mid-September. After that, the river is really dry. So with the GERD, the river is going to be steady flowing throughout the year. and that's why we'll have more electricity production. We can have, instead of 1, 2, or 3 crop rotations, the dam is going to hold the silt, 80% of the silt. And then there's the issue of flood control. Sudan is always affected badly by flood controls. This will not be an issue anymore. Then there is two more issues which I would like to add to Bastien. Navigation, because the river is very low during the months from November until May. It's not used for navigation. Now, with the steady flow after the GERD is completed, the river could be used for navigation throughout the year. And one more important thing, which is not talked about much in Sudan, and probably nobody mentioned it to Bastien. Under the 1959 agreement, which I mentioned a little bit ago, Egypt is allotted 80% and Sudan is allotted 20%, which translates into 55 billion cubic meters for Egypt and 18.5 million cubic to Sudan. However, Sudan has not been able to use this full allocation. Its use has not gone beyond 12 billion cubic meters. So 6 billion cubic meters of Sudan's share under the 1959 agreement has been going to Egypt for the last 60 years. With the completion of the GERD and the river flowing throughout the year and is having 2-3 crop rotations, Sudan will be able to utilize its share under the 1959 agreement. And that's obviously a concern for Egypt, that will be not only reduced flow during the filling of the reservoir, but also if Sudan were to get out of the tragic situation it's now and to utilize the benefits that's coming from the GERD and have 2-3 crop rotations, then that's going to decrease considerably at least by 6 billion the flow of the water so there are huge benefits to Sudan, but as I mentioned, there are problems. Some of them mentioned by Bastien about the issue of the siltation, and siltation is really an issue for Sudan. When there is a lot of siltation, then the turbines of the Sudan's dams are blocked, the electricity there is not generated, and then silt is now occupying 1/2 to 2/3 of the storage areas of the reservoir of the dams. So there is less water stored. So with the GERD, you'll have less silt and you'll have more water storage, and you'll have more production of electricity because the turbines will be running fine. However, you have the other problem that the farmers will need fertilizers, and then there is a brick production. And this is true about any dam. You have benefits and you have problems, and you have to make a decision eventually, try to mitigate the harm that the dam will cause, and make a decision at the end of the day whether it's worth it or not, whether the harm that's being caused the benefits are really more important than the harm, or the harm can be mitigated. So the attempts to resolve the two countries started negotiating, and then negotiations went on for 2011, 2012. In 2013, they established a panel called International Panel of Experts, consisting of 10 experts, 2 from each of the 3 countries, 2 from Sudan, 2 from Egypt, 2 from Ethiopia, and then 4 from outside the Nile Basin, all experts in water resources, hydrology, engineering, and then the report came out, and basically it didn't raise many flags about the GERD. It recommended 2 in-depth studies, which Bastien mentioned, and but there were differences over the studies about the scope of the studies and who should carry them and what are the thresholds for harm for each of the country. And Egypt demanded suspension of the work until the studies are completed, which Ethiopia refused. and so the studies were never carried out. But you can't blame one country. I think I blame the 3 countries for the failure to carry out the studies. This is a report of the International Panel of Experts. It's available online. Just you write International Panel of Experts GERD, and you can get to the report. The last area I would like to deal with is the agreement on the GERD. The 3 countries signed an agreement on the GERD after the dispute, after the negotiations, and went on, and that is called Declaration of Principles on the GERD, signed by the 3 leaders themselves. It's not just an agreement between mid-level officials, signed by President Sisi of Egypt, President al-Bashir at that time of Sudan, and Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn of Ethiopia. It's a very important agreement because it is really now the only agreement between the 3 parties. And leaving aside the 1959 agreement, which is just, as I said, bilateral agreement, which others are not concerned with, they don't recognize, are not concerned with. So this is the only agreement between the 3 countries. And the agreement consists of 10 points, 4 on the GERD, acceptance of the GERD by Egypt and Sudan, and saying that the GERD is for cooperation, regional cooperation, for generation of hydropower. And it goes on, and it says that they will agree on rules for fairest filling of the reservoir, and agree on rules for annual operation of the GERD. And this is where now the differences are. They have not been able to agree on the rules for the fairest filling of the reservoir, although the filling is going on. We have now the fourth cycle of the filling, and there haven't been an agreement on the rules. They are still negotiating. We're hoping that this month or next month, the reports coming out saying that they are close to agreement. So we do hope that there will be an agreement. As I said, the Declaration of Principles is a really major breakthrough because it is the first trilateral agreement. It was followed by an agreement called Khartoum Document, which dealt with the 2 studies to be carried out, but that's again, as I said, the studies were not carried out. This is the signing of the Declaration of Principles in Khartoum, and you could see the two presidents and the Prime Minister. And here again, very high spirit of indication of cooperation and brotherhood, but unfortunately, that didn't last. Those are the 3 heads of the state: Sisi, Bashir, and Haile Mariam Desalegn. As I said, the dispute continues on the timetable, exchange of information, and filling and operation of the dam. The dispute is, unfortunately, reached the UN Security Council. This is the first international water dispute ever to reach the Security Council. And the Security Council discussed it briefly and issued a presidential statement encouraging the parties to continue negotiations and endorsing the African Union mediation efforts. And the main difference is that Egypt and Sudan are demanding a treaty with clear stipulations on the filling and operation, and with a third-party role and final decision on dispute resolution. Ethiopia insisting that those are just rules to be issued by Ethiopia alone in consultation with Egypt and Sudan, and there is no role for a third party or a treaty because those are internal rules which are approved by Ethiopia. And so that was the main difference. There are now, as I said, areas of agreement, but again, no final agreement, although there is hope that the agreement will be reached. The first filling took place in 2023. The water stored is now over 40 billion cubic meters. The total storage of the GERD is 74 billion, so we have gone beyond 50%. I keep saying this, and I haven't said it at the beginning, but I would let's spend a minute before I conclude, is that I really feel the GERD should have been a jointly funded and managed project in lieu of most other Nile dams. It is really a project that should have been trilateral project between Ethiopia and Sudan and Egypt. And then we have similar projects. We have the Itaipu between Paraguay and Brazil and Paraguay. We have the Manantali, the Senegal River between Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, and so we have other examples that we can follow. But unfortunately, this project, which should have been a major, jointly owned and managed project, is just now a unilateral development plan. There is need for full and good faith cooperation we need to react. In my view, this is our concluding remarks. Three concluding remarks. There is a need for full and good faith cooperation amongst the 11 Nile riparians. Without cooperation, we cannot efficiently and effectively share, manage, and protect the river. In my view, the cooperative framework agreement is a reasonable, balanced agreement and should be reactivated, and the differences can be worked out. And I have written about the possibility of working out those differences, the options for working out. And then should lead to the establishment of a Nile Basin Commission, which could have been the venue, where all the issues that are being raised by the GERD and by the other countries could be discussed. Information could be exchanged through the commission. The disputes could be raised to the commission to resolve. So really a Nile Basin Commission is, which is, of course, it has to be legally autonomous entity and managed by competent water experts, not politicians, and it endowed with full authority. And as I mentioned, there is a Senegal River, OMVS, and I mentioned the Manantali Dam, and I think this is the last slide. Nile River is there are large areas of cooperation which we mentioned for the Nile, which have not been utilized. Ethiopia hydropower, Sudan irrigable lands, Lake Victoria fisheries, South Sudan livestock and irrigation, and Egypt relative industries. None of them is really being utilized by jointly. Challenges, as I mentioned, unilateral development plans, hegemony. The 1959 agreement is basically a hegemony agreement for the Nile between Egypt and Sudan. And there is colonial treaties which are not recognized are only recognized by Egypt. The others reject them. There is a lack of trust. This has been going on for a long time. Of course, there is a power shift now, which is raising those issues. The GERD is an indication of the power shift and of the level of the playing fields. And unfortunately, this is, rather than being used for cooperation, it's resulting in competition. And if not managed, it will result in more inefficient use of the Nile waters. The CFA, the Cooperative Framework and Agreement, and the GERD have definitely leveled the Nile playing field. That's why we have the other countries now talking about their rights and about equitable utilization. The way forward, as I mentioned, reactivate the Cooperative Framework Agreement. And as I said, the GERD should really have been a jointly managed and jointly funded and managed project. And the question that I would like to leave the attendees with is whether that's still possible. It's whether there is still some area for, not exact, I mean, it's difficult now to make it fully funded and managed, but how could we still make it a three-way project, a project that there is agreement and then the clear benefits and for all the three and all the other things about the exchange of information and about the data and about I will stop here and be happy to answer any questions because I rushed my presentation. There may be some points which are not clear. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salman. That was quite intense and insightful to us all. Thank you so much. I've seen quite a number of, there was an ongoing discussion in the chat box from Ahmed Said and Alem Gabriel. A few inputs on the investigative piece and the ongoing conflict and also filling of the dam in Sudan. Thank you so much. We're going to give you a chance to speak. But just before we lock out Ethiopia, we have William Davison on the call. I know we've taken quite a long time. Davison, pardon us. The floor is yours. Dr. Salman, we hope you can stay on for any upcoming questions.
No, I am there.
Yeah. So at this point, allow me to give William a chance to have his inputs on Ethiopia's perspective on the GERD. Davison, the floor is yours.
Yes, so a couple of things. So I think Dr. Salman is still sharing his screen, perhaps?
You'd like to share?
No. I think that Dr. Salman is still sharing his screen.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Salman, your screen is still, okay, thank you. Is it okay on your end, Dr. Davison? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely fine. And
okay,
then just in terms of the scheduling, I think we're running a bit behind schedule. So what would be the best thing to do? Because I think it would be good to allow the party to ensure we have enough time so that the participants have their say.
Okay, yeah, we are right. We are behind time. We are a couple of minutes behind time, about 20 minutes behind time. I think you
how long do we have? How long do we have left in the meeting?
We have actually exactly 15 minutes to go. But
Okay,
we'll give you maybe 10 minutes. Then you give another 10 minutes to the general audience and the researchers who have been commenting on the group to have their inputs.
But sorry, we have 15 minutes left, you say?
Yeah. Can you do yours in 10 minutes? Is 10 minutes enough for you?
I think why don't, because I think Dr. Salman has covered a huge amount of territory there in terms of the negotiations. And so I think it would be good to allow the participants to have their say. So I'll just say a few brief words about the overall situation, and then I think we should probably just move to the question and answer session, which I can obviously contribute to. I think the speakers and presenters so far have outlined the key issues here. We can see that GERD is something which has a lot of potential benefits for Sudan, but for various reasons, that benefit certainly hasn't been realized yet. And I think increasingly it's become a project which the risks to Sudan have become, have started outweighing those potential benefits in terms of the Sudanese perception. And I think that's the sort of critical issue here, and where the negotiations have failed to produce an agreement to address that problem. Now, why is it that we have failed to reach an agreement? Well, essentially, Ethiopia's position here has been that it has a sovereign right to utilize its own resources, and it is doing that, but it is also respecting international law as it sees it by promising to build this dam, which is obviously on the transnational river, in a way that's in accordance with international legal principles. That's been the Ethiopian position, and they've stuck to it throughout as they have continued to construct the dam. Where the fundamental disagreement lies is that Sudan and Egypt say that that is not good enough, and as Dr. Salman explained, they want an international legal treaty binding Ethiopia into these commitments. So Ethiopia's starting position is, we are building this and we will do it in a responsible fashion. Sudan and Egypt say, that's great, but we want to have that as nailed down as possible in the form of a treaty. And then the issue becomes obviously what's going to be in the treaty. Put simply, Ethiopia has not been willing to make the type of commitments that Sudan and Egypt demand of it in a treaty. And there's all sorts of issues that have popped up over the years. You can broadly break them down into sort of hydroelectric issues and legal issues. The form of dispute resolution has been a massive one about whether Ethiopia will be subject to international arbitration in the event of any claim, any dispute arising from the agreement, and the issue of how much water Ethiopia is committed to release in the event of a sort of drought period of various types has been another major issue. These are the sorts of things that Ethiopia has not been willing to sign up to in an international treaty. Because it's been unwilling to sign up to these things, there has been a failure to produce any international treaty. And as that situation has continued and evolved over the years, it has meant that Sudan, whilst perhaps initially at the outset of the project seeing all these benefits and essentially showing sort of faith and trust in Ethiopia, increasingly it's lost faith and trust and has been concerned about the risks of the project, whether in terms of flooding or or just simply not receiving the promised benefits and having to deal with a lot of negative environmental impacts of the dam. That's really the sort of overarching problem here, which I think Bastien and Arthur's article looks to do a great job of explaining. Looks like a really valuable resource. Unfortunately, I don't think that we're at the stage where we are suddenly going to get a breakthrough in these talks, these tripartite talks. They've taken different forms. The Emirates has been involved recently. Before that, the US was involved. The African Union has been involved. All sorts of actors have been involved. They've not been able to reach a comprehensive treaty or agreement on the filling and operation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The dam is becoming more of a reality every year. And instead, I think we're perhaps looking more towards the future of that touched upon by Dr. Salman, where another Ethiopian position has been, we are willing to sign an international agreement. We are willing to engage in multilateral, legalized, formal cooperation on this river, but it can't just be about our one dam. It has to be about a basin-wide, maybe a sub-basin, the Blue Nile, but ideally, something like the Nile Basin Initiative and the Cooperative Framework Agreement. We are willing to discuss that and discuss joint management of the project, how we can save water, how we can perhaps do projects jointly, and how we can best use this resource to our mutual benefit. Ethiopia has always been trying to push these discussions in that direction whilst they made their own dam a reality. And that has obviously caused a huge amount of friction, but it is the case that the dam now is a reality. And perhaps the focus now will go back to those multilateral discussions rather than focus on the dam itself. Okay, I will leave it there because I think it would be great to hear some of the comments from the participants, and I'm here to answer any if they can't be answered by the journalist and by Dr. Salman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, William. That was quite brief. Just a minute. I hope you can all still hear me. Okay, there's so much that needs to be talked about. I'll go with Alem. Alem, you can raise your question.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
All right. My name is Alam Gabriel. I reside in Houston, Texas. I'm a water resource professional. I've been doing water resources and consulting fly-based sector here in Houston for the past 26 years. And I have with education, a PhD and master's, and in agriculture engineering, PhD in water resources. I'm originally from Ethiopia, you can tell from my name. I've been involved in GERD since inception. I put a comment on the chat regarding the impact on the first filling of the dam in 2020. And it kept coming up. I have raised this issue in a couple of forums, but I haven't really gotten a concrete answer on that one. So during that time, the first filling, I think it's a mute point. I think we are debating it for historical perspective at this point. And there was a disruption of water supply system in Sudan. And there was more than 100 million cubic meters per day flow in the Nile River. So I just could not really see any kind of disruption. I mean, I can see, there was lack of communication. There was lack of notice, but the communication may not really be very effective, efficient at that time. We need more of that, more of communication, more of cooperation. I can get that. But this thing comes back again and again without really doing research and backup information about the disruption of the water supply system in Sudan. So that was my comment. And we need to do a little bit of digging and research before we make that kind of statement, even though the other side claims that there is disruption, including the foreign minister of Sudan at the time. She made a statement in the UN Security Council meeting and several meetings after that. So I think this kind of misleading information does not help bridge the gap between the three countries. So I'll yield here, but on the negotiation part, I think it's still going on between the three parties. Hopefully they'll reach to some kind of an agreement. The main sticking point have been really raised by Dr. Salman and the other person who spoke just before me. And it's a drought mitigation question issue. So Ethiopia will not and cannot get into that kind of commitment when there is drought in Ethiopia itself. I think that's the sticking point. I think if that's point is resolved or not into a commitment, hopefully we'll get a breakthrough. You can understand that one. When there's no rainfall in Ethiopia, there is no, the flow in the river will be low. So that's how Egypt is defining drought. But in Ethiopia, the impact is immediate because that season, that year, you see drought, starvation, and loss of agricultural produce. But in Egypt, since they have really a storage in Aswan for over 2.5 years, they can at least buy a year without really any major impact. So that's the main sticking point. I hope it will be resolved and come up with cooperation. We need cooperation between the three countries. They are tied with the Nile. I just want to make this comment. Thank you very much for hosting this forum.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alem, for that. I think I'll take up all the questions first, and then I'll ask Dr. Salman and Davison to respond. Azza Mustafa, you can go next.
Hi, good evening and good morning to all the participants. I'm Azza Mustafa. Hi, and I'm a member of the Sudanese negotiating team on the GERD, and I'm very happy to be here, and of course to have Professor Salman, Mohammed Ahmed Salman, with us this afternoon. And of course, Bastien and all the other, David and all the other participants. My question for Dr. Salman is, given the stakes for the parties, do you think there's more reason for cooperation, or is there more reason for unilateral water use in the Nile Basin in the near to the medium long term? Yeah, that's my question. It relates to my wider interest in the subject, and I hope to get your opinion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Azza, I hope Dr. Salman, you've taken note of that question. Next, we go to Rawia Tawfiq.
Thank you. My name is Rawia Tawfiq, Associate Professor at Cairo University. I have just a quick question to Bastien and a couple of questions to Professor Salman. So Bastien, since you had the opportunity to speak to local populations in Sudan, of course, I didn't have the opportunity to read your report, and I look forward to reading it. But if you can just give us more insights into what the Sudanese local population think about the GERD and its potential impacts, and do they have more concerns or more optimistic views? I think this will be useful. And to Professor Salman, of course, a pleasure to see you. We cooperated more than 1 decade ago on a special issue on the GERD in Water International, and it's good to see you contributing to the discussions on GERD again. And having said that, I think my first question will be, 10 years ago we used to speak about the potential impacts of the GERD, but now it's a reality, and the impacts are already felt, and more criticism from official sources during the negotiations from Sudan, have come up on the inaccuracy of information provided by Ethiopia, on the impacts on dam safety, of the potentials of non-cooperation on dam safety, especially the Roseras, which is very close to the GERD. So I was asking, to what extent have you also increasing concerns than positive or optimistic insights on the impacts of the GERD on Sudan? That's my first question. Then my second question: why do you think, since you mentioned that 40 billion cubic meters have been filled in the GERD, and it was officially announced that the first stage or the first filling of the GERD is now complete, so why do you think Ethiopia has not gone for the 74 billion cubic meter? if you have any answer to that question. And then just a side note, yes, Sudan has been claiming that it has not been using its full share of the Nile waters as suggested by the 1959 agreement. But as far as Egypt is concerned, I think we have many reasons to believe that Sudan has already been using its full share, especially with the agricultural expansion in the last 2 decades and the new dams, the Marawi Dam, the heightening of Osiris, and so on. So just a note on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rawia. I want to believe Ahmed Said, it's the same. Your hand is still up. Maybe if you've already spoken, you can put your hand down. I will start with Bastien, then Davison, and then Dr. Salman. Each of you can respond to the specific questions directed to you all. Bastien? I think your microphone is off. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yes, I will take the question of Rawi about the local population and how they perceive the GERD. And I will take 2 examples, one on Tuti Island, so in the middle of Khartoum. It's an island at the confluence of the Blue and White Nile. And it's an island that suffered a lot from flooding every year, almost every year. It's part of the island is flooded. And when the 2020 floods, which were one of the biggest floods of the century, happened, people, of course, they were like they believed that it was because of the GERD that started at the same time its first filling phase, but I feel that nobody had like concrete and precise information, and they were winning at the same time, or they were hoping the GERD could mitigate the floods the next year, but also at the same time they were thinking that maybe it can change something and that more and more floods will happen on the island. So I think a lot of people in Sudan lacked of information and communication about the consequences of the GERD. And the other for the other part, I went to the Blue Nile region, which is at the border between Ethiopia and Sudan. And as I told there are some communities that have already been displaced by the building of the Osiris Dam, and after by the heightening of the Osiris Dam in 2012, I think. And so they have this kind of relationship with the dams where every time it's affecting their livelihoods, and they have to move. So now when you go on the Osiris Reservoir, you have their old markets underwater and old houses. And so now when they heard about this huge dam, because it's compared to Osiris Dam, it's like something else. It's 10 times the storage capacity. They are afraid first of the risk of collapsing, because it will be the first population impacted, and secondly, they are wondering how it will affect their livelihood as farmers, as fishermen. As I mentioned regarding the biodiversity consequences of the GERD, nobody can predict now what kind of specific impact it will have, but we can say that it will change the fauna and the flora and the ecosystem because of the oxygenation, of the temperature of water, of the migration of fishes that will be stopped by the GERD. And you can have also, like, for example, at Damazin, which is the main city in the Brunei state, near the Osiris Dam, you had a community of people that their livelihood was, they were getting and collecting the wood coming from Ethiopia during the rainy season and selling it on the market. And for them, it was sure that with the GERD, their job would disappear, and so they were quite anxious about this. So, and it's a small example, this community of people collecting wood, but it's just to say that of course a dam of this dimension will have impact on the local population, but for most of them, they still don't know. I will speak from before the war because I couldn't go back to Sudan since then. They still don't know how far, to what extent it will change the Don, it will change the situation. And one of these reasons is also because the assessments that were supposed to be done, especially by two French companies, Artelia and BRL, about the consequences, environmental consequences, and for the population. They never shared their findings, or we don't know what happened with this assessment. And on the other side, Sudanese government didn't conduct any assessment also. So yeah, the local communities are in between, and they will have to suffer or to benefit from these consequences, but they cannot get prepared too much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bastien. I hope the question is fully answered.
I hope to.
Yeah. There was a question I had forgotten to select Ahmed to ask his question. Ahmed, kindly ask your question. Please make it brief so we can save on time.
Thank you very much. My name is Ahmed Saeed. I'm currently a master's student in international relations, and I've done a lot of work on the ground on the border between Sudan and Ethiopia. A lot of which had to do with population movement and livelihood, especially water. Now, cooperation, I've covered actually a lot of the meetings on the GERD on the ground in Khartoum. And a lot of the sticking points have been commented on by Dr. Salman. And thank you, Bastien, as well, for answering my question on the findings of the two French companies on the impact on the downstream populations, the socioeconomic impact, but also the hydrological impact. I'd also like to second what Dr. Salman has said about the 18.5 billion cubic meters Sudan is entitled to, as based on the 1959 agreement, but actually Sudan only utilizes 12, and that has been known for quite some time. And about 6.5 billion cubic meters go to Egypt as a water loan, if so to speak. My main concern here, and I would like an answer on that, is there has been a lot of back and forth between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia since the framework agreement in 2015 between Haile Mariam Desalegn, Sisi, and al-Bashir, and the negotiation rounds after that, and a lot of technical hodgepodge, if you will, that did not necessarily look to the bigger picture on cooperation. Ethiopia is mostly made of highlands with a population of over 100 million people. Sudan is mostly made of flatlands with a population of only 45 million people and a huge amount of arable lands. I heard Dr. Salman saying 45 million acres of fertile arable land. Therefore, in many cases, like Alam has mentioned, when there's drought in Ethiopia, a lot of Ethiopians come into Sudan. Seasonal workers come to work in agriculture, about over 100,000, and a lot go to Khartoum and other Sudanese cities to work. I mean, before the war. Now, cooperation can, aside from electricity, there's already a link, aside from which can be used for cooperation, but also if the other points of contention between Sudan and Ethiopia, for example, the conflict in Fashaga and allegations of support to Tigray from Sudan and allegations from Sudan of support to the RSF, if those points of contention increase, then Sudan reviews that electrical grid link also as an avenue of retaliatory action, not only an avenue of cooperation. And that's why communication is highly paramount and cooperation is highly paramount. How those can be elevated and the others can be mitigated is the question. Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you so much, Ahmed Said, for that. William Davison, you have something to say in response to the questions raised towards you and specifically Ethiopia, or any comments?
Okay, I'm not here representing Ethiopia, first of all. I'm not sure there are any specific questions directed towards me, but just a couple of very quick things. I think Larie mentioned the issue of Ethiopia's last filling and the 74 BCM target. I mean, I think the filling target was 49 billion cubic meters. And my understanding is that then the dam is considered filled. And then in the subsequent rainy seasons, the dam will fill up towards the 74 billion cubic meters, and then water will be released back down towards 49 BCM subsequent to each rainy season. That's my understanding of the normal course of operation. So I think the dam's now at about 42 BCM, so it's not far off the 49 BCM initial filling target. And maybe just a quick point about drought mitigation that was raised by Alam, I think. So, drought mitigation is obviously going to be a difficult issue. People are likely to be suffering from drought at the same time. But we should note that these dams, as the speaker mentioned, that the Aswan Dam and the GERD in time do provide a huge amount of water storage, which can be used to provide all sorts of things, including boosting irrigation, as Bastien was making clear, as well as that sort of some sort of emergency flow during drought. Thankfully, severe droughts are not that common. Of course, there's increasing climatic volatility. We're not quite sure how that's going to affect Nile Basin in terms of precipitation levels in the future. But ultimately, the GERD does massively boost water storage. It can be used to help downstream countries during times of drought. And what's really at issue is what I was describing. Ethiopia is not willing to sign up in advance to release certain amounts of water in certain hydrological conditions. It wants a much more ad hoc, flexible arrangement. There are ways of doing this. The engineers, the hydrological engineers who have studied this, you can look at their technical reports. It's complicated, in terms of how is this dam best managed in various conditions, depending upon electricity demands, water demands, climatic conditions, etc. But there are ways of doing this, and drought mitigation can be part of that. It's been hard so far, and Ethiopia essentially has refused to sign up to releasing certain amounts of water in certain hydrological conditions. So yeah, just to try and add some clarity on what are the sort of key obstacles and issues with regards to drought mitigation.
Okay. Thank you so much for that input. Dr. Salman, there are a couple of questions that were raised. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'll respond, but I'll hope I'll be quick. Alam raised the issue of the interruption, the allegations of interruption of water supply, and the statements made by the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, and saying that there was interruption of water supply. This really should be looked and viewed in the larger picture of Sudan. In Egypt, almost everybody is opposed to the dam. In Ethiopia, almost everybody is for the dam. Sudan is just in the middle of geographically and on the dam. You'll find a large number, some number of people who are opposed to the dam and who are highlighting the negative impacts that have been mentioned, and you find a larger group, another large group which are pro-dam, highlighting the benefits. So this debate has been going on for Sudan since 2011, since the project, the GERD, started, and I think it will go on for some time. And so the issue of the statements made by the foreign minister should be seen from that angle. As a question about the question whether it will be more cooperation or whether we'll continue with the natural development plan, I think the way I look at it, and I'm wrong, I may be wrong, but I hope I will be right, is that the 2015 agreement, the 2015 the agreement on the GERD was really a pivotal moment. It's a very important moment in the history of the Nile, because you see the three heads of the states, the two ministers and the two presidents and prime minister holding hands and sitting in the same room, and then came those issues. But I feel as that once the dust is settled with the GERD, once we have reached the stage where the filling is completed and the issues are some kind of resolved about this exchange of information and about the filling an operation. I think the attention will be, and the energies will be spent towards, okay, so where do we go from here? And I think that's the answer. I think and hope I'll be right, is that, well, let's look at other areas of cooperation. We missed this one, but let's look at other areas of cooperation. Ravia, it's good to see you. Ravia Tawfiq and I have been working on those issues and meetings for a long time. And she raised a question of the potential impacts and the real impacts on the real reality on the ground. And one major positive impact is the cessation of floods. Usually, for the last 2 or 3 years, we did not hear the word floods in Sudan. Before that, there were really major issues, especially in the border areas, the Blue Nile State. And so this is one major issue. And the other major positive development is the electricity. I mean, Sudan, with all the potential electricity we have, the coverage is about 20–30%, and even that coverage, it's there for 8 hours, 9 hours a day. Now the situation is better after the dam. There's more water in the Marawi Dam. There's more water in Rosaris Dam. So on the ground, yes, in reality, yes, there is. There are signs of the positive impacts of the dam. Why has Ethiopia not filled the dam? I think William Davison answered that question about how much water is there and how much is filling, and I think that question is taken care of. The last point raised by Ravia is whether Sudan is using its full share of the Nile waters, and I stick to my point that Sudan is not only not using it 6.5 billion cubic meters. It is losing far more because the Nile is not 84 billion. It's 109, some reports 115, other reports it's 122, and all this excess should be shared equally between Sudan and Egypt. So we can continue this discussion privately on you and I, but no, Sudan, yes, Sudan is not using its share, and now with the war situation and the problems, I think there will be less use. I think there will be more waters. And this takes me to the points raised by Ahmed Said about his work on the border, and that the Sudan, same point raised by Ravia, but from a different angle, whether Sudan is using its share or not. And he mentioned that it is a loan. It's not a loan, because it's as engineer Dr. Osman Atom said, use it or lose it. If it's passing through our land first, and if we don't use it, then that's our problem. It's not Egypt's problem that it's getting a loan. No, it's our problem. So it's not use it and lose it. And the question of the 45 million acres of arable land, I think that leads me again to the issue of cooperation. These huge areas of irrigable land is really, I mean, it's not just Egypt and Ethiopia that are looking at it, but the entire region is looking at it. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and are also looking at it. So that again could be a catalyst for cooperation. Thank you. No, I think we lost everywhere.
Okay.
I lost. Are we there, or am I?
Thank you, Dr. Salman, for clearing that up. I highly appreciate your answer.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you so much, Ahmed. Just to wind up, because I know we have gone over the required time. Just this question goes to both specifically to Davison, but also Dr. Salman, you could answer. We know that large dams not only impact the energy production and agriculture, but there are also huge impacts on the environment. And through this investigation, as Bastien mentioned, we were not able to find comprehensive environmental impact assessments on how the GERD is expected to impact the environment. Do you know of any environmental impact assessments that are ongoing? Davison?
No.
Well, yeah, I think this has been a fairly, this has been a point of contention ever since the international expert study that Dr. Salman mentioned in his presentation. The essential conclusion there was that there was insufficient studies had been done to inform an assessment of the dam's impact, and of course then we had the process of trying to agree the consultant to conduct those assessments. I think it was the fact that there hasn't been a comprehensive environmental impact assessment is essentially a product of the failure of the tripartite negotiation process, and I think there is some important work to be done there. And yeah, so I think definitely an outstanding issue and something that needs to be addressed, and but something which ultimately is a failure of the political side of things.
Okay, thank you so much for that. In the interest of time, I would direct this question to Dr. Salman. How do you see the media covering stories on the GERD, and how do you think journalists can improve their reporting on the GERD?
This is a very long questions and requires a long answer. Maybe we should have a special session, the next one, about how do we see journalists covering it, and bring some people who are working, bring some of us who are working there, including Alam and Ahmed Saeed and Rabia, to see how it's covered. But I think I would say by and large the coverage has been objective, and has been it hasn't gone into detailed issues that need to be addressed, because this is a very complex project and you don't really expect everyone to know all the details. I mean, even those of us who have been involved, I don't think I really know all the details. I would say, I mean, I was involved at one point, and then there was the stoppage of information, so I wouldn't say I'm really up to the date on the GERD. So I think as I would conclude, the coverage has been objective and neutral, but I think it needs more in depth.
Yeah, I would just to add to that, I would say there's been quite a lot of not great coverage, and I think that there has been plenty of good coverage as well. I think big project been going on for a long time, but essentially this is a highly sensitive and then that's politicized project. So I think there's quite a lot of agenda-driven media coverage that doesn't help, which is trying to present one or the other party in a particular often negative light, and I think that's unhelpful. I think media coverage in this type of circumstance is most useful when it tries to explain the position of the other party rather than take a sort of preconceived position condemning one or the other side here. And then the other is the point that Dr. Salman has mentioned. This is a very complex project, and so the more in depth and the better the media does at explaining the technical and the deeper sort of political historical aspects of the project, the legal aspects, the better, because it is a complex, multifaceted project, and the media doesn't always do a great job on that. But it does look like the article that Bastien has produced is a really useful and valuable contribution, and I think a good example of the type of media coverage that the project and the region would benefit from.
Okay, thank you so much, Davison, for that. I'd like us to wind up at this point moving forward. I'm sure most of you are wondering where Arthur is. Arthur is one of the journalists that was supposed to join us. He was on the poster. Just to let you know that Arthur is out on assignment in Palestine to cover the conflict, and he has a report that needs to be aired and shot today, so that is why he was not able to join us. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you so much, guys, for joining us. But before you go, there's an opportunity that has been shared by Dr. Emmanuel Fantini from IHE Delft Institute of Water and Education. I have just posted it now. It was shared earlier, but you can check on the chat box. For all the Sudanese students who'd like to join and attend the session, they'll be presenting their research. Feel free to use the link to join. We have also shared the research, the investigative piece that Bastien and Arthur had done between the dam and the sea. Feel free to also read it and share within your networks. Now, we've come to the end of our session, but before we close, as usual, we have the quiz section. Please, could you kindly do this in the shortest time possible? Just to let you know that the previous session of Science Wednesday winners, we sent them your prizes. We hope you received, but we have two people who did not receive their prizes. There's Razia from Tanzania and there's Kicking Off from South Sudan. Kindly write to us, info@infonile.org. We don't have your details, so we were not able to deliver the prizes to you. I'm posting also the email address on the chat box. Kindly write to us, and then we can be able to send your prizes to you. So, Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, let's jump straight into it. I hope you can all hear me. Yeah, so
yes, we can.
We shall use the chat as our answer sheet. So whatever answer you give, just put it in the chat. Delegate will look at it, and the first one to respond gets the points. All right, without wasting time, let's go. Now, for everyone who has been in attendance of this wonderful lecture, let's dive in. Question 1. After passing the GERD, the Nile River meets Restoris Dam, located on the Blue Nile River at Damanzin close to South Sudan's border with Ethiopia. After the GERD, the Nile River meets Restoris Dam, located on the Blue Nile River at Damanzin close to South Sudan's border with Ethiopia. Is it A, Northwestern Sudan, or B, Eastern Sudan, or C, Southeastern Sudan, or D, Southwestern Sudan? Again, is it A? Okay, I already see an answer. Delhi just tally for us. We'll go to question 2. Name Sudan's largest hydroelectric dam with power capacity of 1,250 megawatts. Is it A, Jebel Alur Dam? Is it B, Upper Atbara, or C, Restoris Dam, or D, Miro Dam? All right, we already have an answer there as well. All right, question 3. Which year and month did Ethiopia start operating the GERD first turbine? Is it A, February 2020? Is it B, February 2021? Is it C, March 2020? Or is it D, June 2020? Which year and month did Ethiopia start operating the GERD's first turbine? Is it A, February 2020? Is it B, February 2021? Is it D, C, March 2020, or D, June 2020? I don't see this one yet. Question 3, who has question 3? No correct answer yet for question 3. Yes? Hello?
Question 3, no correct answer. We move to question 4.
All right. How many dams are along the Nile in South Sudan? Is it A, 4, B, 6, C, 12, or D, 5? How many dams are along the Nile in Sudan? Is it A, 4, B, 6, C, 12, or D, 5? I don't know if people are still interested. I don't see anyone responding.
They're interested.
All right.
I think they're still. Come again with the question.
How many dams are along the Nile in South Sudan? Is it A, 4? Is it B, 6? Is it C, 12? Or is it D, 5?
The first answer, Emmanuel says A.
No.
Mm-hmm. 2 seconds before we close this question. I think now people are Googling. We need to move to the next question. We have 6 dams along the Nile in Sudan.
Yeah, 6. All right, question 5 and the last one.
For question 5. Yeah.
All right, question 5. From which lake in Ethiopia does the Blue Nile originate? Is it A, Turkana? Is it B, Sala? Is it C, Tana? Or is it D, Langano? All right, we have a winner. Yeah, Tana.
Okay.
C is the East.
Okay,
Thank you guys for your participation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I can see Azza has won 2 questions today. Just to go through, he won question 1. Sorry, just a minute. Question 5 and question 2. The answer to question 2 was the name Sudan's largest hydroelectric dam. That is Moroe Dam. So thank you so much, Azza, for that. Kindly share your email. Okay, Emmanuel, you got question 1 right. Lectana, Azza, kindly write to us, info@infonail.org. But just to let you know that from the last session moving forward, we're not going to send gifts. What to do, the best out of cumulative best out of the next session is going to stand a chance to either get a grant, story grant from us, training and mentorship session, and then number 3 will get merchandise from us at InfoNail. But just to end the session, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. We have gone overboard by about an hour. Sorry, by 30 minutes. We're supposed to finish at 5:30. This is 6:02. Thank you so much for joining us on this last episode of Science Wednesday 2023. Special thanks to the speakers of the day, Dr. Salman joining us from DC, Washington, DC in the US, Davison joining us from the UK, and Bastien joining us from DRC. It is a great sacrifice you made to join us today. We really appreciate. And to the rest of us, thank you so much for making this an interactive session. Thank you for your questions. Just make a point to invite your colleagues next time we're having a Science Wednesdays. We are going to be posting them on social media. You can also write to us, info@infonail.org, recommending specific scientists and environmental researchers in the Nile Basin, and even on topics that you'd like to be covered on the Nile Basin. Just to remind you, you can read the multimedia story between the dam and the sea. We have shared it over and over again, but I'm posting it again. Kindly find time to read it and promote it amongst your networks. Before we go, just want to, you can feel free to turn off your mic and say a big goodbye. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.